Every year since Jeff and Dennis were kids, they would go camping. However, they were in their senior year of college and knew those times were coming to an end. While still friends, both of them had very different life goals and decided to make this summer a memorable one by returning to a small town called Gray Hill because the fishing there was incredible. As always, Jeff was thrilled about the trip and cared more about drinking than catching fish. Now that he was old enough to buy alcohol, instead of stealing from his parents' liquor cabinet, he bought more than enough. Loading up the car with the camping gear as well as the booze, Dennis called.
"Hey, man,"
Jeff said as he shut the trunk.
"I'll be there in 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Dennis said in a tone that made Jeff stop in his tracks. To Jeff, it sounded like Dennis was about to say he couldn't go.
Tabitha's gonna tag along."
Jeff suppressed a groan. Not because he didn't like Tabitha. Jeff thought she was okay, but he felt that this was supposed to be a guys-only event. At the very least, he wished he had some heads up. That way he could have come up with an excuse for her not to come with. Most likely he would have told her that he didn't have room in his car for a third person. While this was true, he knew Dennis would have rearranged everything to make it work.
Come on.
Yeah, she wants to come.
Is she there now?
She's getting ready, in the bathroom.
Say yep, if you don't have a choice in the matter.
After a pause and a slight chuckle on the other side of the phone, Dennis said,
Yep.
causing the two men to laugh. Jeff shook his head as he got in his car.
I just jumped in the car.
Jeff said as he put his keys in the ignition.
I'll be there in a bit.
Thanks, man. I'll see you soon.
Dennis replied before hanging up. After getting to Dennis' apartment, Dennis loaded up his gear, but Tabitha took her time to get ready, much to Jeff's irritation. He wanted to be on the road already and kept checking the time on his phone. Sensing his friend's growing impatience, Dennis said,
Why is it taking her so long?
Jeff asked.
You know how it is. No, I don't. You never had a girlfriend. Fuck you,
Jeff said with a smile.
Seriously though, we are going camping. Why put on makeup? She wants to look good,
Dennis answered with a shrug.
Maybe you should remind her that she looks good so she doesn't feel the need to waste time.
Dennis was about to say something, but before he could open his mouth, Tabitha came out the doors with all her luggage. As Jeff expected, Dennis moved everything around so the three of them could fit in the car. However, no matter how things were rearranged, the cramped space made the hour-and-a-half drive to Grave Hill feel much longer. When the cell reception gave out and the good radio stations turned to static, leaving only two to pick from made the trip feel that much longer. One of the stations were a fire and brimstone religious station, and the other was some kind of conspiracy talk show. Neither of them were left on for very long. Silence was better.
So, where's this campground we're staying at?
Asked Tabitha from the back seat after waking up from a nap.
We aren't going to the campgrounds,
Jeff answered.
So, where are we going?
Tabitha asked, checking her phone and seeing that they only had 2 hours of daytime left.
There are like 40 square miles of woods around the place. We can pretty much go anywhere,
Jeff responded.
What, really? What if it's on someone's property and they call the cops for trespassing?
Asked Tabitha, shaking Dennis' shoulder.
No one's gonna... Or what about some gun-loving cannibal hillbilly? You watch too much television, you know that? No, I'm serious. So am I,
Jeff said as he drove around a dangerous curve. If he went 2 feet over, they would slide down a steep cliff and hit dozens of trees before landing in the river below.
But you know Deliverance is just a movie, right? That isn't why Deliverance isn't why she's freaked out. It's because she saw The Hills Have Eyes,
Dennis said with a smirk. Tabitha gave him a slight smack on the shoulder.
Stop it! They're coming to get you, Barbara,
Jeff teased.
That's not even the right movie, idiot,
Tabitha said, sticking her tongue out.
But seriously, we aren't just gonna go into someone's land, are we? Why not? There's plenty of land out there.
he added, gesturing all around them.
The way I see it, we can either camp off in the middle of nowhere, which according to the internet is pretty much everywhere, or we can just camp somewhere on their land. If they say no, we just camp in the middle of nowhere, answered Jeff, irritated that Tabitha was bringing the mood down with all her questions.
I thought you said we were going to a campground, Tabitha asked, squeezing Dennis' shoulder. Dennis turned back to face her with a smile.
Trust me, you don't want to stay at a campground. Why? There isn't much to look at. Plus, I think some of the people there last time lived there. Oh, they definitely lived there, laughed Jeff.
How do you know? Asked Tabitha, not sure if she should believe her boyfriend and her best friend.
We were camped downwind of them,
laughed Jeff before changing the subject.
Hey, is this where we went last time?
He asked, pointing at the road that seemed abandoned. Dennis wasn't sure and shrugged.
Good enough for me,
Jeff responded as he started to turn onto the dirt road. Both sides of the road were thick with trees, so it gave the impression that it was later in the day than it actually was.
I can't believe we're doing this,
Tabitha said with a disbelieving smile. By the end of the road, the three came across a large clearing filled with wildflowers and a wonderful view of the rolling hills above the trees. It was a photo-esque moment that Tabitha had to capture on her phone, but when she tried to share it on social media, she was irritated, but not totally surprised that the signal was too weak to complete the task.
What do you think?
Dennis asked, as he and Jeff were pulling things out from the car.
It's wonderful,
Tabitha answered.
Is this where you went last time? No. But I like this place better.
After the three set up the tents, the group went walking through the woods in hopes to come across a river so they could get some fishing done. Jeff didn't want to go to bed hungry, and he knew from experience that he didn't want to eat at Missy's diner. It didn't take long before the three heard the sound of running water and followed it. They came across the river. The two guys started setting up their gear, but Tabitha didn't have experience fishing, but was eager to have Dennis show her. At least she was for the first 15 minutes. After that, she quickly grew bored and announced that she was going to go for a hike and would be back after a bit. After giving Dennis a kiss on the cheek, Tabitha began her hike, all the while taking pictures to share with all her friends and family once she got the reception on her phone. She hoped that she could get a few pictures of some animals, but she wasn't having any luck finding any. While her eyes scanned the tree canopies for birds, she saw something sway in the gentle breeze. Since the sun was quickly waning in the afternoon sky, she didn't know what she was seeing, but when she got closer, she saw that someone had quartered a deer and hung it up high in the trees. Seeing it made her want to leave the area, and even though she was disgusted and confused by what she saw, she took pictures to show the guys. When Tabitha got back to the river where the two guys went fishing, she went to Dennis and showed him the pictures. He tried to comfort her as he reeled in the line, not being able to hear what was being said over the sound of the river's running water, but sensing something was wrong. Jeff shouted his question.
What's going on? Tabitha saw something in the woods.
Dennis called back.
We're heading back to camp.
Jeff cursed under his breath. He didn't like Tabitha before, but now he started to hate her. He didn't even want her to come in the first place.
Hold on,
Jeff said, as he reeled in the line because he didn't want to be the only one fishing. They had hot dogs in the cooler, so at least they wouldn't go to bed hungry. When they got back to camp, they heard the rumblings of a mufflerless truck approaching. A few moments later, they saw an old rust bucket that might have been blue at one point pulling up.
Be cool,
Jeff said, turning back to the others.
I got this.
When the truck stopped, a tall man with a big bushy black beard hopped out. Before Jeff could do so much as smile and wave to placate the situation, the man started shouting.
Why the hell are you here? Sorry, Jeff said. I thought this was public. You need to get out of here,
the man shouted.
Now! Sure,
Dennis said. We'll just pack up and...
No!
The man shouted before reaching into the truck and pulling out a shotgun.
That'll take too long. Get in the truck. Whoa,
Jeff said, holding up his hands and dropping his gear.
Oh my god, oh my god,
Tabitha
oh my
said
god, oh my god.
repeatedly as she held Dennis close.
Can we talk about...
Hand over your phones,
The man shouted, shaking his gun at the three. When they handed their phones over, the man then asked the group which of them could drive stick. Only Dennis could, so the man ordered him to drive the truck and follow the man's directions, while he sat behind them with a shotgun at their backs.
Okay, can we just...
Dennis started, but was interrupted when the man fired in the air above them.
No. Now get in if you know what's good for you.
After a short drive down a dirt road that seemed to take forever and a day, they arrived at an old trailer, a silver Airstreamer. Next to it was a garden, a large shed, and what looked to be a distillery.
Pull over there,
The man said in the back seat.
next to the shed.
After putting the truck in park, the man had Dennis take the keys out of the ignition and hand it back to him. Then he got out and ordered the three to follow him into the shed.
What are you gonna do to us?
Whimpered Tabitha.
Shut up.
The man growled as the three stepped into the shed. Inside was a large, heavy-duty cage with a chain-link fence that wrapped around the iron bars. Get in,
Into the cage?
asked Dennis. The man lifted the shotgun to Dennis' face before answering.
Yes.
Seeing no other option than getting shot, the three got into the cage and the man locked the door behind them.
Why are you doing this?
Jeff asked as the man retreated out of the shed.
I'm saving you.
The man answered before running back to the truck and quickly driving away. Ever since his brother locked him in a chicken coop as a joke, Dennis hated cramped spaces. It was even worse this time because he had been taken prisoner by someone with a shotgun. Tabitha did her best to comfort him, but other than trying to escape, all she could do was hold him close. It was perhaps an hour after the sun rose that their captor returned. After getting out of the truck, he came into the shed and it looked as though he was crying.
I'm sorry. Can we start over? My name is Ted, and
Do you want money? I can get you money.
Tabitha whined. Tears swelled up in Ted's eyes for a moment before he collapsed against the wall and hung his head. After a moment, he started sobbing, shoulders heaving up and down.
I'm not asking for money.
Then why did you kidnap us? Why aim a gun at us?
Look, if I let you go, you leave, never come back, ever,
There was a chorus of agreement from the three captives.
and not tell the cops?
Ted asked.
No cops? We will just leave.
Tabitha answered. Ted shook his head and stared at the space between his feet for a long time without talking.
I want to let you go, believe me. I do. It's just that I don't know if you're serious.
Hey, Ted?
Tabitha said gently, hoping to find the good in their captor.
If you let us go, we won't tell anyone. We'll get in our car and drive away. You will never see us again.
Ted started to both laugh and cry.
Look, I know how this looks. If I were you, I would tell the cops the second I was let out.
Ted?
Tabitha asked, hoping to find the right combination of words to use so Ted would let them all go.
We won't. Promise. We can all forget this ever...
Tabitha never finished what she was going to say, because suddenly Ted stood up and went out the door, leaving the three terrified college kids in the cage. After an hour or so, it was hard to tell without a clock. Ted returned. He was no longer crying, and was carrying a mound of pancakes, some plastic forks, butter, syrup, and plates.
You, must be hungry.
Ted said with an awkward smile as he sat on the floor next to the cage.
Who, wants the first plate?
No one answered as they huddled to the far corner of the cage to get as far from Ted as they could.
I got some fruit cocktail in the trailer if you want that instead of butter and syrup.
Jeff said slowly.
We want to leave. Okay,
Ted said, trying to think of what to say as he scratched the hair on his neck.
Ted,
Asked Tabitha as gently as she could.
I know you're not a bad guy. I can see it in your eyes. So, why don't you let us leave?
You're going to think I'm crazy.
Ted laughed as he separated the paper plates and loaded them up with pancakes, butter, and syrup.
Really?
Jeff asked, his voice tight with irritation as he was motioning the cage around him.
Why would we think that the guy with the prison, the guy who fucking abducted us at fucking gunpoint, is crazy?
Ted nodded.
Yeah, you got a point.
He answered as he slid the first plate of pancakes under the fence.
Maybe I should start at the beginning. This cage isn't for you. It's for me. Well, it was. I had to rebuild it a few times because I kept breaking it. But I kept it up because I figured that someday I might get a few chickens and this could be their coop, you know? Okay.
Jeff asked, not caring in the slightest. He just wanted to leave.
Well, might as well just say it, I guess. I am a werewolf.
Dennis let out a honk of a laugh before stopping himself.
It's true.
Ted answered.
That's why I brought you here. I couldn't just let you stay out there. Because you're a werewolf?
Asked Jeff, not believing the words coming out of his mouth.
That's right. The reason I made you come here was because you were camping on my territory. If I didn't bring you back here, it would have killed you.
Jeff smiled and shook his head as he started to pace.
This fucking guy. Shut the fuck up.
Dennis warned, realizing that antagonizing their captor wasn't going to get them out of there any sooner.
It's true. I wish it wasn't, but it is.
Ted answered.
Is that why you were gone last night? Because you were hunting? If so, then the full moon is over. We can leave, right?
Dennis hopefully added. Ted shook his head.
Last night was not a full moon. It isn't like as it is in the movies, okay? It's 5 nights a month, the third being the full moon. The first day, you're little wolf-like. The next night, you're halfway there, and so on. The night the full moon, you're a full were. Okay, don't listen to him. He's a fucking psycho.
Jeff said.
I don't hunt. I've made preparations so I don't hurt anyone. Preparations?
Dennis asked, his voice small.
I hang meat up in trees. The smellier the better. The wolf runs around a big circle from one to the next instead of hunting.
Ted answered, sliding the second plate under the fence. Tabitha's eyes grew large.
I took pictures of meat hanging up in a tree.
You saw it? So you believe me?
Ted asked, hope shining in his eyes.
Sure.
Dennis agreed, desperate to get away.
Yeah, we believe you.
Yeah.
Tabitha agreed.
Satisfied?
Asked Jeff.
Can we go?
Ted looked down at his feet.
I just need to know you're not gonna call the cops or nothing. Cross our hearts?
Jeff answered.
We promise.
Tabitha added. Dennis nodded rapidly.
I want to believe you. I really do, but...
Ted said, trying to make the three understand.
You understand the situation I'm in, right? The situation you're in?
Scoffed Jeff.
Shut the fuck up!
Dennis warned under bushy eyebrows.
You want me to prove it? That I'm a werewolf?
Asked Ted. After a moment of not coming up with any better course of action, he nodded in defeat.
Fine. She's pregnant,
he said, pointing to Tabitha. Jeff and Dennis looked towards Tabitha to see her response, and were surprised at what she did next.
I swear I was going to tell you.
Tabitha said, looking at Dennis.
I just found out a few weeks ago.
Dennis said.
How?
Tabitha smiled, despite the circumstances.
How do you think?
Dennis held her close and looked at Ted suspiciously.
How the fuck did you know that?
Ted pushed the last plate under the gate before he pointed to his nose.
I could smell it. See, during those 5 days, my senses are heightened. What's that supposed to prove? That you're the fucking Wolfman? Fuck off.
Jeff answered before looking to Dennis and Tabitha.
This guy's full of it. He's Sherlock Holmes us or something. Maybe he's a stalker. And he's been planning this for a while. Maybe he saw the test result in the garbage and is getting off on this. We went up the wrong driveway,
Dennis replied.
If he was setting this up, he would have hung the meat in a different place. Oh, well, I guess he really is a werewolf,
Jeff said before looking at Ted.
I don't know what kind of sick fucking game this is, but I ain't playing it and I ain't fucking buying it. Let us go, or I swear I'm gonna kill you.
Ted frowned before standing up to leave the shed. When he opened the door, he stopped, and without turning around, said over his shoulder,
I don't expect you to believe me, but I saved your lives last night.
Over the course of the day, Ted would return to the shed with food, but stop trying to convince the three of his affliction, and instead his attempts were to prevent them from pressing charges. However, no matter how much Ted wanted to let his captives go, there was nothing they could say that was enough to convince him to let them go. Throughout the day, the three prisoners could hear Ted outside the shed, loading up his truck's flatbed and driving off. He did this 4 or 5 times. Each time he was gone for perhaps 45 minutes or an hour. Without a clock, it was hard to tell exactly how long he was gone for, but that didn't stop the three from trying to find a way out of their cell. With the sun shining through the only window in the shed, the three were able to see the surroundings better, and that was when Dennis came up with the idea to use his shoelace to snag the Snell door handle. If he was able to lift it, the door would open up. This was easier said than done, because the handle was very heavy. And they had been trying this method to escape for nearly half a day with no success, only stopping when Ted returned, shortly before nightfall. Ted came back into the shed with a shotgun, blankets, and pillows. First, he made them back into the far corner so he could open the door and put the items on the ground. If any of the three thought about charging, the shotgun was enough to change their minds.
Stay here,
Ted said after locking up the cage.
I'll be back in the morning. I'll make us some biscuits and gravy. How's that sound?
He asked with a smile, but after seeing the look on the three, his grin dissolved. He opened his mouth to say something else, but shut it, opened it, and finally shut it before heading out the shed door. A moment later, the three could hear him starting up the truck and departing. As soon as they couldn't hear the truck, they went back to the escape attempt.
Someone's gonna come looking for us,
Jeff said from the corner after Tabitha took over the task of trying to get the cell door open.
Right? We said we were coming back to Gray Hill,
Dennis answered.
And Tabitha, you have housemates that'll come looking for you.
Tabitha was too busy with her task to answer. In the silence, there was a howl in the distance.
So, how far is the car?
Dennis asked. Jeff shrugged.
Half a mile, maybe? Okay, not too bad.
Dennis answered.
Depends on when we get that door open and when he returns.
Jeff said. Bring the mood down.
Jeff?
Tabitha said.
Shut the fuck up. Whatever,
Jeff responded. After another 20 or so minutes, again it was hard to tell how long it was because there was no clock around, Tabitha managed to snag the handle, lifted it, and opened the door. There was a quick celebratory cheer, which Tabitha was quick to silence.
He might be out there,
Tabitha said, her finger to her lips. The others nodded and they made their way out of the shed. It was hard to tell where Jeff's car was parked, but Dennis seemed pretty confident as he led the others. He kept on the dirt road, but was ready to leap into the ditch the moment he saw headlights. A howl rose from the night air that chilled everyone. Dennis laughed after the moment passed.
Hearing that Ted story about werewolves? Fucking creepy. Let's not wait to see if there's any truth to it.
Tabitha replied, her voice tight with irritation.
Truth to it? Fuck. Really had you going, did he? No.
Tabitha laughed.
Shh.
Dennis snapped, his finger to his lips.
So he knew Tabitha was pregnant? It was a trick. Doesn't mean a fucking thing.
Jeff said with a shake of his head.
Shut up, Tabitha said. Okay. All I'm saying is...
There was another howl. This time it was monstrous and close enough that the air seemed to shake violently. None of the three had to be told to run. They just ran.
What the fuck? 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 Move your ass, slowpoke!
Dennis said, turning his head to look at Jeff. When he did, he saw something big in the middle of the road charging at them. He gave out a pathetic whimper and doubled his efforts to run even faster. The sound of heavy breathing and heavy footfalls from behind them got louder with every step. A few strides later, there was an inhuman snarl and the beast pounced onto Jeff, sending him to the ground. When Dennis and Tabitha turned to see what was happening, they were horrified at what they saw. Kneeling over Jeff was a giant black wolf with blazing yellow eyes that burned like anthracite. Its long, muscular arms were swiping at Jeff in a mad flurry as its fingers would tip with claws as big as steak knives. Jeff was holding his hands up to protect his face, but even in the dark, both Dennis and Tabitha could tell his forearms were torn to ribbons. With a growl, the beast lowered its head to bite open Jeff's belly and feast on its insides. Spittle of blood burst out of Jeff as he looked at his friends with wide-eyed horror. For a long moment, Tabitha and Dennis could only stare at their blood-covered friend twitched on the ground as the beast's maw reached under his ribs. The further inside it went, the more bubbles of blood came from Jeff's lifeless mouth and nose. Tabitha grabbed Dennis' hand to prompt him into running to safety with her. However, this made Dennis let out a terrified squeal that made the werewolf pull its blood-soaked head out of its fresh kill and look at Dennis as it smacked its lips with whatever part of Jeff it was eating. While Tabitha wasted no time running blindly into the forest, Dennis was too scared to move and pissed his pants. As the wolf slowly approached Dennis squeezed his eyes shut, as if he was trying to wake up from a waking nightmare. However, the feel of the werewolf's damp breath as it sniffed him was too real to be a dream. Tabitha could hardly hear Dennis scream over the sound of her own racing heart. She ran and ran, and when she had nothing left to give, she ran some more. From somewhere behind her came another howl, as if the werewolf was telling the world that it owned the night, and to stay away from its territory. Beyond the point of exhaustion, Tabitha finally stopped next to a tree to catch her breath. As she did, she remembered that when Ted first took them hostage, he said that he saved their lives. At the time, she thought he was crazy, but she understood he was serious and began to cry. She thought of Dennis, the father of her unborn child, and cried harder, so hard she couldn't hear the heavy panting approaching from the direction she came from. When she finally did notice the sound, there was nothing she could do to stop the horror that was to come.